Welcome to the life you crave. Simple and sustainable weight loss for women who have better things to do than diet. I'm your host, Leah Pinelli. I help ambitious, badass women stop overeating, overworking, and overgiving to lose weight from a place of love. I'll help you simplify weight loss, end your overwhelm, and create the life you crave. If you like what you hear, please like and subscribe to this podcast. Let's get started. Hello and welcome to the Life You Crave podcast. Today, we have Dr. Zarya Rubin, who is a Harvard-educated functional medicine physician, TedX speaker, and burnout expert. She helps passionate, high-achieving women get to the root cause of chronic symptoms and stress, which I know I need right now, so that they can heal from the inside out and truly thrive. She is the founder and CEO of Dr. Zarya, a boutique functional medicine practice in Portland, Oregon. Dr. Rubin studied neurology at McGill University and the renowned Neurological Institute at Columbia Presbyterian Hospital in New York City. She received her integrative nutrition training at the Institute for Integrative Nutrition, studying with Dr. Andrew Weil, Dr. Mark Hyman, Dr. Deepak Chopra, and other leading influencers in the world of holistic health, and went on to complete advanced functional medicine training at the School of Applied Functional Medicine. She currently lives in Portland, Oregon, with her husband, 11-year-old daughter, and Bichon miniature poodle puppy. Dr. Zarya, thank you so much for joining me on the show today.
Yeah, it's a pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yes. Okay, so we just got to jump right in because I feel like burnout is such a big freaking deal for so many of us. And I would love to hear, first of all, how did you get started kind of with this particular specialization in burnout? And I would love to also hear, I would just love to hear what your thoughts are about burning out on things you love versus burning out on things that you maybe don't love, but you're doing anyway. Do you know what I mean?
Oh, that's a really great question. Okay. So I'm going to go back.
Yeah.
Gee, how much time do we have? How long is this podcast? I'm going to go
yeah, right.
question.
Yeah.
How did I get started with burnout? Well, you know what they say, do what you know. So I am unfortunately intimately familiar with burnout, having burned out several times in my life, probably in my early to mid 20s, and then again in my mid 30s, which was pretty much the most salient and life altering episode of burnout when I left medicine for a period of time.
Yeah.
Due to burnout and chronic stress. And that was pretty dramatic. And I talk about that in my TED Talk.
Yeah.
About how that all transpired, how the chronic stress of medicine and, things from my past and my childhood all contributed to this perfect storm. And then a tragic event happened that was my wake-up call in that moment. And, I can go into more detail, but you can watch the TED Talk and hear all about it. Yeah. But I think that was my catalyst initially in really changing my life. If you had asked me at that time, were you burned out? I don't know that I even would have said yes. Because I don't think I had the language or the tools to recognize that. And I think that is the plight of so many of us today and so many women today, of not necessarily even knowing, am I burned out? Am I not burned out? So we'll get into that for sure. And then your second part of the question about burning out on something you love versus something that is making you miserable. Well, I can definitely speak to that because medicine was something that I loved.
Yeah.
It was something that I had dreamed of, being a doctor since the age of 5. I had never considered doing anything else. Did all of that schooling, 4 years of pre-med, 4 years of med school, 5 years of residency, 2 years of fellowship, and then to walk away at that point is a brutal decision that isn't taken lightly. Yeah. But I felt like it was either my mental and physical health or it was my job. And I had to make a choice. And it was a really hard one. I compared it to sort of walking away from a long marriage that had a lot of positive, but in the end, the negative outweighed the positive.
Yeah.
And you had to make this really brutal decision. So I think that in some ways, it is easier to recognize and to walk away from burnout when it is something that is not making you happy. Now, of course, there are financial constraints and other life constraints and things that are challenging in any circumstance, but I think it is actually harder to walk away from something that you love, but is not serving you for whatever constellation of reasons. And I mean, and then there's the ultimate burnout, which is, parenting or caregiving, and you can't walk away from that.
Right. Well, I guess you could, but there would be some repercussions.
Not recommended. And and I think that you just have to sometimes find ways. Sometimes you don't have the option. Being a mother, you don't really have the option. You have to find ways to push through while taking care of yourself. And in other situations, you can possibly try to find a way out or a way around it. And that's, that can be really challenging. I don't want to underestimate that for folks. And that's when I came across this Turkish proverb that was, no matter how far you've gone down the wrong road, turn back. It's like, I was going in the right direction. I thought I was doing what I loved. I thought this was the answer for me, and it was the be-all, end-all, and it was my dream job. So why did it feel like a nightmare?
Yes.
I think you have to really ask yourself those tough questions.
Yes. So why did it feel like a nightmare?
Well, I think I was suffering from a combination of chronic post-traumatic stress, from having a lot of medical trauma as a child that was unrecognized and untreated.
Yeah.
When I got into medicine, I was constantly being exposed and re-exposed to that trauma day in, day out in a hospital. And that takes a toll on your nervous system because you're in a constant fight or flight situation.
Yeah.
You are constantly running for your life. And I didn't sleep. Aside from not sleeping much when you're training to be a physician, the sleepless nights and the endless pagers going off and the call and the being surrounded by death and dying, that can be something that can burn you out.
Yeah,
totally. I think also fundamentally, I did not have the temperament for it. I think that oftentimes, going off on a bit of a tangent, but we go into medicine because we care so much. And I think in some ways that can be a detriment.
Yeah.
That you have to be able to have some sort of separation and put up walls and not be this very deep empathic person that I was. And it really took a toll on me physically and mentally. And I was just like, I'm not cut out for this. Now, I managed to, walk away and, reinvent my life and do all kinds of other things and had many other careers. And then I eventually did find my way back to medicine because it kept calling to me, kept saying, I still want to help people. I still want to heal people. I still want to focus on health and wellness and help women thrive and women who were stuck in a situation that was similar to mine, but I want to do it in a completely different way.
Yes. Yeah.
And I don't want to burn myself out doing it. So I found a way to do that.
Yeah, I love that. It reminded me of, my background is in education, and I certainly didn't have to go through medical school or residency, but I did invest a lot of money in a master's degree from an Ivy League school and, a lot of time and energy into that career. And one of the things teachers burn out constantly all the time.
Teachers are one of the top careers.
One of the top. I think it's similar to medicine, although I had never thought about it before until you said that. In that, and I've said this to so many, eventually I was an administrator and then I was coaching teachers for a while as an instructional coach within the school system. But I started to tell newer teachers, I would say, there will always be more kids. And what I meant by that was it's that you hear it. It's for the kids. It's for the kids. I got to do it for the kids. It's for the kids. It's for the kids. Kids first, students first, students first. And yes, I fundamentally want to put students first, but not before me. Because you can't.
It's the oxygen mask principle.
It's the oxygen mask.
And if you do not put your own oxygen mask on first, you cannot serve and you cannot help others. It's a tough concept to wrap our heads around because our instinct is to just give and pour from an empty cup.
Yes. And I think especially, there can be so much pressure, social pressure, environmental pressure, where it's like, oh, well, she's not, I've told this story on the podcast before, but I will never forget that I was very much kind of subtly, but not so subtly, shamed for choosing to go to my only child's preschool graduation instead of working basically security at the high school graduation where I was working. And to me, I was like, this is a freaking no-brainer. But to them, they were like, oh, wow, she's not okay. She's not going to be there. Well, you know what I mean? I'm like, oh my God, is that really the culture that, but that totally contributes. I mean, not just to burnout, but also to resentment and, a really unhealthy
cynicism, which is a key foundational component of burnout is cynicism and the resentment. And that comes from a lack of trust and a lack of respect in the organization that can happen over time, especially if we're not treated the way we, feel we deserve to be treated. And I think as women, that's something we often have a hard time standing up for.
100%.
But there's a lot of shame around it too. There's a lot of shame in the culture of burnout of like, oh, you're not working hard enough, or well, everyone else is fine. What's wrong with you? And then I think that leads to a lot of secrecy and not sharing or admitting that there's something wrong, you're struggling, or this is just not working.
And now, when we talk about burnout, we usually think about work first, professional career work. I think the second thing we think about, though, but in totally ensconced in shame, is burnout as a parent.
Mm-hmm.
And then the third I was thinking about, I'm wondering how much of this you get, is burnout in relationships. So maybe not caregiving relationships, maybe in relationships that shouldn't be caregiving, but somehow are caregiving.
Yeah.
What is your experience with that? I mean, in terms of supporting women?
Yeah. So it's interesting. So, I'm not a relationship or marriage counselor, but I do often hear people express, some dissatisfaction or concerns, or maybe they're single. And that can be very, very stressful. I was single for a very long time. I know what that's like, putting yourself out there in the dating world, but also being in relationships that are not serving you or nurturing you in the way that you need to be seen and recognized and cared for. And if you're really the one pouring everything into the relationship and the other person is not, that can take a toll on you physically and mentally as well.
Yeah. Okay, so that begs the question that I was like about to interrupt you when you did this earlier, and I didn't. I know everybody listening, they want to know. Okay, so like, how do you? Because you said sometimes it can be sneaky, right? Like you don't even know that you're burning. And I feel like that's me. I feel like it's so funny. It's so timely that I'm talking to you because I literally feel like I had the most beautiful week last week of travel and speaking and all these fun things, and then I feel like I pretty much had a meltdown last night actually. Because I got back and it was just like all these emails to catch up with and all of this, so much work to do. And I'm just like, oh, okay, what are the signs of burnout? Because maybe that's why the vacation felt so good and why coming back felt so abrasive.
It is sneaky. It does sneak up on you. And I think oftentimes people will just brush it off as, I'm tired. I'm busy.
Yes.
I'm hustling. I'm adulting. These are just all terms that we throw around of like, or I'm stressed. I'm stressed. I'm just stressed.
Yes.
Now, what is the difference between being stressed and being burned out? Well, if you are stressed enough for long enough, that will lead to burnout.
Yeah.
We can tolerate certain amounts of stress. Our bodies are designed to handle, an acute stress. Something happens. Maybe you get rear-ended in traffic. And yes, it's stressful and it's annoying and it's terrible and it throws your whole day off, and then it's over and you get hopefully it's over and you don't have like chronic neck issues that I ended up after that. But so that's sort of an acute stressor, and that our stress hormones go up, they peak, they come down. It's okay. You can handle. But then we have other types of stress. So we have something called episodic stress or intermittent stress, which is like, let's say, you have a really crappy meeting on Tuesdays and every week it's coming up and you're like, oh, it's terrible. Or you have a long commute in a lot of traffic and drivers are honking at you and swearing at you. And Like that's really stressful. Or you have to go, to your in-laws for dinner every week or something, an episodic stressor that just keeps recurring. And that can take a toll on you as well. And then there's chronic stress, which is basically you're in a situation where the stress is somewhat continuous. Now that can occur in parenting, of course, and certainly having a newborn or a very young child, having a special needs child or a sick child, which I have, and that has been a journey on its own. And then, being in the relationship stress that we talked about.
Yeah.
Financial stressors, things like, and, relating it back to functional medicine and health and food stressors. So food in and of itself can be a constant chronic stressor on your body if you are consuming things on a regular basis that don't agree with you. Food allergies, intolerances, that creates biological, physiological stress in your system. And then we won't even go down the road of the internet and societal political stress that we have as a background.
Oh my gosh.
Add on to that a little something that we had, the global pandemic, that we are still recovering from, I believe, in a collective trauma way that has not really been addressed. It's like, well, our kids lost years of their lives and years of schooling. We lost years of, our social connections. We lost people and we're just like, okay, now it's back to business as usual and get back in the office. And so these longer term chronic stressors take a toll because they create this mental background of chatter and noise that is always there. They create hormonal fluctuations and shifts in your body because you are not designed to have sustained cortisol released in your body for weeks and months and years. And that will eventually take a toll. So at that point, it starts to become burnout. And so I think that if people who suspect maybe they might be burned out, they're generally always burnt out. Like, I don't think I've ever met someone that was like, I don't know if I might, like, I think maybe I'm burned out, but
right.
Yes, if you think it, you probably are it. And if you have been in a stressful situation for a long period of time, or the situation is extremely stressful and it's a shorter period of time, like death and dying and things like that. I mean, my goodness, that's like the ultimate stressor. Or something like a divorce. I mean, that extreme stress. So that it can very easily tip you into burnout. But there are some like hallmarks and characteristics and qualities that you can look for.
What should we look for?
Yeah. So there are, the problem with burnout, it's so ubiquitous. Everyone's heard of it. Everyone knows it. But can you put your finger on it? Can you define it? I think most people can. And the problem is that most experts can't either. So there's a hard time finding consensus in terms of medical research, psychological research. But over time, since the term came about in the 70s, we have kind of landed on three characteristic hallmarks of burnout. And the first one is exhaustion. Now, that one is pretty easy to grasp. And it's not just like, oh, I'm tired. I got a bad night's sleep. I'll sleep in on the weekend or something and catch up. And you feel better and more restored. It's like you go on vacation and you come back and you feel worse. And the vacation itself is not even restorative. It's like a bone tiredness. It's a not able to get out of bed. It's a like, I can't do this anymore.
Yeah.
Exhaustion. So that's number one. Number two is cynicism, which is a tricky one to grasp in terms of a concept. And that is something that we kind of touched on about, like, you've lost trust in the organization. The values maybe aren't aligned with what you want to be doing. You're doing something that isn't respected, or your work isn't being noticed, right? You have a crappy boss. And then there's something called compassion fatigue that actually comes up in a lot of like caring professions. And
I was going to say the helping professions.
Teaching, helping, emergency,
therapy, nursing.
Military, therapy, medical fields, where you're supposed to be caring about these people and you can't because you have nothing left to give. And then the shame really does kick in as well.
Yes, which is exhausting. And
I'm supposed to, this is literally my reason for being and my job. And I'm not feeling it. I don't have it. And you feel really bad about yourself. And then, of course, there's the classic decreased productivity. You're just not able to be as productive. And you might still be doing an okay job. You're not getting hauled in like, oh my goodness, you're not working, because you probably were working at 150%.
yes, totally.
Because you were probably a perfectionist and an overachiever and extremely hard on yourself. But you notice, like, I am not getting as much done. I'm not completing my tasks. I can't focus. I'm irritable. I don't want to be here. And then I get home and I don't want to be around my family either. But I'm just like, and so those are the three kind of classic hallmarks. And you don't necessarily need all three. And there's a bunch of other, there's a laundry list about a page long in terms of, physical manifestations.
Yeah, I was just going to ask you about that. I want to know about that.
Yeah.
Maybe not every single one.
No, but just we'll run through kind of the classics and the common. Yeah. Obviously, sleep is a huge one. So if you are not sleeping, this is a recipe for disaster. And that's often where I start with my patients and clients. It's like, if you're getting bad sleep, you're not getting restorative sleep, you're not getting enough sleep, quality sleep is not great, you are on the road to burnout and you're on the road to chronic health issues because you can't heal and repair. So sleep for sure. Headaches, a really common manifestation of burnout. Immune issues. So either a weakened immune system, so you're getting sick all the time, or a heightened immune system, and you're getting things like autoimmune disease.
Okay, wait, when you say getting things like autoimmune disease, you would have to have a predisposition, right?
Yes. So there's like this multi-pronged overlapping Venn diagram of perfect storm of autoimmune disease. That's at least a role that we use in functional medicine, a genetic predisposition, an environmental trigger, stress, and then certain things like, vitamin D deficiency, leaky gut, other things like that all contribute and form this perfect storm for autoimmune. So I really, truly believe that burnout contributes. I ended up with autoimmune disease later in life after I went through my severe burnouts, and I can't help but think it contributed. Of course, all the cardiovascular manifestations of burnout, high blood pressure and cardiovascular issues and, even heart attacks, things like this, and metabolic issues. So resistance, diabetes, weight gain, weight loss, all of those things. And then like aches and pains and muscle aches and tension and all of this, like GI issues, of course, they all can be manifestations, physiologic manifestations of burnout.
Which is so tricky because those are physiological manifestations of a bajillion things, right? But I want to ask you about common saboteurs, meaning, so I always say that sleep is the number one priority, right? Like it's
100%.
Absolutely. But then I'm also a lover of wine, right? And so it's one of those things where it's like,
alcohol, caffeine,
right? And I love
exercise. I do love exercise. Is also a saboteur.
Meaning like if you do it late at night or what have you.
Too much exercise.
Too much,
cardio.
Yeah. Which so many women get sucked into, right? Without
because exercise is often a way of escaping the stress. I mean, it's a great stress reliever. Don't get me wrong. I love exercise. I love movement. I tell people movement rather than exercise because it's a dirty word. But I say, walk, swim, do yoga, do some bar, Pilates. Don't overdo it on the cardio. Don't train for a marathon.
Totally.
If you're burnt out.
Totally.
It's like, so that's not going to serve you.
I have a client who, she's the most active woman I know. She loves working out. Like she's one of those people who really loves it. Like it's a total stress reliever. And for the longest time, she was struggling with unwanted weight, and her body would not release that weight. It would not release it, even though she was doing quote unquote all the right things.
All the right things. Yeah.
And finally, I said to her,
"Let's move more." Doesn't work.
No, God, if it did, I mean, this woman, So anyway, eventually I was like, let's just play, because I had a hunch about what all the cardio might be doing to cortisol levels. And of course, I'm not a doctor, but, I read a lot. And so we played with taking a pause and still moving her body, but just not doing any, yes. And sure enough, the weight just went right down. But, but then importantly, I have to say, though, that the reason my company and this podcast is called The Life You Crave is because if you love exercise, it doesn't necessarily mean that you don't do it. It just means that you find the methods and the frequency and whatever it is that actually works, that gives you harmony.
Exactly. Right. You have to find what works for you and, what makes you happy and what also makes your biology and physiology happy.
Yeah. So what do we do about this? Because, I think for me, I remember, when I was I was 32 when I was promoted to assistant principal, from being a teacher to an assistant principal. And I was so excited, right? I mean, I was thrilled. I didn't have any children then. So, life was easy. Yeah. But I remember noticing, I noticed at work that there was like a fluttering in my throat. And I went in and, they put me on the whatever it is. And I was having heart palpitations. Mm-hmm. And I talked to my acupuncturist about it at the time. And I said, I don't understand why I would. And they couldn't find anything wrong, blah, blah, blah. Yeah. And it's probably stress. And I was like, I don't have a lot of stress. And I remember talking to which my job was, it wasn't stressful, but when I was talking to my acupuncturist, she said, there's something called EU stress, which is you're loving what you're doing. So it doesn't feel like your typical stress, but it's actually having the same impact on your body, which was totally true. I mean, I was go getter, right? Go all the time.
And it's like the stress of like something positive, like getting a promotion or getting married.
Exactly.
Or having a baby. Like those are all wonderful things.
Yes. Very stressful. So it's sneaky in that way, right? Like it doesn't seem fair. It's like, boy, I wanted this. Like I'm even happy doing it. And yet my body is rebelling in this way. So what do we do about this, Dr. Zarya? I mean, do we like just go to the spa, take more days off? Because to me, that makes life more stressful.
Because sometimes adding more and going to the spa can be stressful too.
Yeah,
like, oh my gosh, I got to make an appointment for a massage and I got to fit it in and I don't have time.
Yeah, it's and all of the work that I'm not doing while I'm at the spa will be waiting for me when I come home. Right. Causing like extreme stress then.
No. So we need to rethink a lot of things, I think.
Okay. What do we need to think? I'm taking notes.
There's like a societal level and then there's an individual level. And because we can't necessarily change society right now, you got to focus on what you can change. And number one is start to pay attention to your body. So exactly what you were saying about, I noticed I was having these palpitations, like what the what? Like some people just choose to ignore that and push through it.
Yeah.
But those are like check engine lights.
Yes.
And if you ignore it, I mean, you could keep driving the car. It's fine. One day the engine's going to fall out.
Yes.
And it's going to be on a day that you need the car.
Really need the car. And it's going to cost you a lot
of, exactly, in repairs. So be a detective and be in tune with your own body and start to listen. I mean, I would also get like palpitations and a feeling of like kind of like sweatiness or something, but I wasn't sweating. It was like, and to me, that was like, oh, that means I need to work harder, push through it. And then later, oh my God, that was completely backwards. That was the opposite of what I needed to do. Yeah. And so, the analogy that I often use with folks is the frog in the boiling water. So when we're attuned to things, so if you take a frog and you put it in a pot of boiling water, like what is it going to do? It's going to jump out.
Yeah.
It's going to be like, what the? I don't like it. It's terrible. Yeah. But if you take a frog and you put it in a pot of nice room temperature water and you turn up the heat 1 degree at a time until it gets to boiling, what's going to happen?
Yeah. It's going to stay right there.
Going to stay right there and boil because it's happening so insidiously and slowly and over time, and it's not noticing these shifts and these changes. So I think we really need to pay attention as women to the changes in our bodies, our emotions, our hormonal fluctuations. There's monthly, then there's seasons of life, perimenopause. My God, that's a big wake up call.
Yeah.
In terms of really having to listen to your body, and the whole notion of, well, whatever got you here, it ain't going to get you there, because
That's right.
everything shifts and you can no longer fake it till you make it.
Right.
You have to get serious about
Yes.
taking care of yourself.
Yes.
And so that's the first thing I encourage folks to do is start listening to your own body and your own wisdom.
Okay.
The next is really like developing skills and tools in your toolbox. Now, people often come to me and they say, how can I be more resilient? Like, how can I be more tolerant of stress? Take on more and not be so like burdened by it, and not be so stressed by all the stress. I'm like, no. I want to actually lower your tolerance to stress.
Yeah.
Because I don't want you to let it build up.
Right.
That being said, we can still have some tools in our toolbox. Things like breathing practices, mindfulness practices, whether that's meditation or whether that's something else, whether it's crochet or something that you love to do, doodling, or crossword puzzles, or just something that can take you out of the endless cycles that are in our mind.
Yes.
Taking social media breaks, staying off your phone, spending time in nature, spending time with friends, maybe having one glass of wine, but not 3.
Right. Yes.
So all of those little things. And then, of course, there's like a re-envisioning and reimagining of priorities that I like to call, it's setting boundaries, and it's the do one thing less method. It's what I sort of pioneered in my TED Talk. And it's like, it's really simple, but it is not easy to do.
Yeah.
Because just like you said, you're like, oh, but these things are going to pile up. And then if I don't do them, blah, 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 blah.
Yes.
It requires a little bit more than just putting something off. It requires thinking like, is this required?
Yeah.
Do I need to do this? Can I, the 3 Ds of like delete, delay, delegate.
Yeah.
What can you just take off your plate and not actually do? So, you're running around and you're doing all these errands and whatnot. And you're like, I have to do this and this and this and this. Sometimes I'm like, no, you know what? That 3rd or 4th place, I don't need to do that. I don't actually, this is not mission critical in this moment. I can delay it, or I can not do it at all. It's fine. I'll find another option.
Right.
And then maybe I won't get that parking ticket, or I won't get in that fender bender because I'm rushing around in this like chicken head cut off state.
Yes.
And I think we need to give ourselves permission to do that. And it's not that you're going to be less productive or get less done. You're actually going to be more intentional and more efficient with what you're doing.
Right. Yeah, totally. It makes me think of that book. I've got it right back there. Do Less.
Oh, yes.
You know that one by Kate Northrup?
Yes.
Yeah. That was the first time I think and it seems like such a tension between her message and your message. No, you guys are sharing a very similar message.
Yeah.
That tension between that and hustle culture, particularly with female entrepreneurs and business owners and women in leadership. And it's so tricky. Like when you say do one thing less, it's not mission critical. I'm thinking like I just came from, a vacation, and on that vacation, I have a million ideas come to me about, oh, I'm so excited about this idea to do this or that professionally. And really noticing like where it's a great time for me to do some, dreaming and scheming, so to speak. And so it fills my cup. I love doing it. Then I'll come home with a ton of to-dos. But the point being that it's very energizing to think about those things. And so when I think about doing one thing less, I have a tendency to just add more. But it's the adding more is like more because it gives my life this fuller expression of itself. However, it actually creates more work for me, right? And so when I think about, for example, I want to have more intimate female dinners, like I want to have these events that are definitely missing in my life. I'm like, well, I'll just create them. I'll just do them. I will organize them. I will plan them. I will invite people. I will do them. And that's great. But then I'm not, and I want to do that, but then I'm not taking something else off my plate in order to make room for that.
Yeah, it's sort of the one in, one out method. Also.
Yes.
You know, when you're decluttering your closet and stuff, it's like there's only so much capacity.
Yeah.
You're only one person. There's only so many hours in the day.
Yeah.
And, you know, yes, we can do a lot. We can do hard things. We can get a lot of things done. And it is really important to pursue those things that give you fire and that give you that spark and passion in life. And I'm not saying don't go after those things or, you know, don't add something to your plate that is going to bring you so much joy and satisfaction or like do something really hard. Like I was like, I want to give a TED Talk, you know, and I was like, that's not easy.
Yeah.
But it was worth it.
Yeah.
Certain other things had to be sacrificed along the way because there is only so much that we can take on as human beings. And I think sometimes we think we're superhuman, especially as moms. And I mean, we are, but there's a limit to it. And just recognizing what those limits are and what those boundaries are. And there's a season for everything. So there are going to be seasons where you're doing maybe too much, quote unquote, but that's required in that moment. It's just not sustainable long term.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. It's so hard, right? Because I want to do all the things. So it's so inspiring to talk to you because I'm literally going to get off of this interview and I'm going to go look at my calendar and be like, okay, what's not critical? What can I take off? Because I want to put those dinners on. So what can I take off? But Dr. Zarya, tell us how do you help women? How do people work with you?
Yeah, so there's a couple of ways. I mean, of course, go take a look at my TED Talk. It's on YouTube. It's on my Instagram. You know, follow me on Instagram. You can also get your free Burnout Toolkit, which is on my website and on my Instagram as well.
And it'll be in the show notes.
It's a free download, and it has a lot of the things we talked about and a lot of really actionable tips and things. And I'm also doing this thing on Instagram right now that is like a daily tip, burnout tip. And they're short and they're sweet and they're just like quick to digest. But if you feel like you need more support and you need a deeper dive into like, I have all of these things going on. I have seen doctors. No one can figure it out. I don't know what's wrong with me, but I don't feel something is not right. I see a lot of those women and they come to see me like as a private patient. So I do see a limited number of patients and we will go deep into your history, into your current, environment, what's going on, into your food, into your diet. And we will take a look at labs. We'll possibly order some specialized testing. We'll do a really deep dive into like no stone left unturned. What are we missing here? Is there a hormonal imbalance? Is there a dysbiosis in the gut? Is there leaky gut? Are there food intolerances? Like what things are going on that are contributing to you, Dr. Mark Hyman calls it FLC syndrome, feeling like crap syndrome. And there's often a reason for it. And that's the thing. It's like, I believe patients and I believe women. Like no one has ever come to me and said, I feel like crap. And I do. And I, in the end, I go, there's nothing wrong with you.
Right.
That has never in the history of my medical career happened.
Yeah.
I have always found something. Yeah. And, maybe it's not some huge, super serious, life-threatening thing. Thank goodness.
Right.
We're finding things really early on.
Yeah.
And things that are addressable, and things you can rebalance, and things you can address without getting on a medication, without having procedures or things or being really, really sick. And I think that is hopefully the future of healthcare and medicine, that it becomes more preventative. It becomes more, let's try to aim towards health rather than like address illness downstream when the horse is out of the barn and things are already out of control. And there's and there's autoimmune disease and there's all kinds of, long-term chronic conditions. I would love that to be what our future looks like. So
yes, absolutely. And so what is it? Where is the intersection? I mean, I think I hear it, but I'm wondering, because you don't coach women.
I mean, there is a lot of coaching going on. I mean,
it sounds like it.
It's a holistic, integrative approach that combines my medical background and knowledge, I am trained in integrative nutrition and health coaching. So there is some of that.
Got it.
And there is also all of my functional medicine training. So you'll get the hardcore science,
Yeah.
you'll get the love and the attention and the humor, and you'll get it all wrapped up so that you can make these changes.
Yeah.
You figure it out, because oftentimes people know what to do, or they know what they should be doing, or they can't do it. They don't know how to do it. They don't know in what order. They don't know what will work for them, or it seems too daunting and overwhelming. It's like, cut out dairy and gluten now.
Yes,
and
totally.
So sometimes I'll be like, okay,
right.
Let's not do that. Let's cut out one thing first, or let's, we do things like crowding out, which is like adding really lots of good things in, and then have the space for the other.
Yes, absolutely.
And that's, there's never any restriction. I don't ever put people on diets or anything like that.
Yeah.
'Cause I don't believe in that. It's not part of my food culture. It's like, we have to find what works for you. It's, again, getting in tune with your body. Figuring out what works, whether it's food, whether it's exercise, whether it's, sleep, other things, finding some joy, putting vitamin J back into your diet.
Yes, absolutely.
We are all missing huge doses of that, and that can be really healing.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, I absolutely adore you. I am so glad that you came on the show today, because your mission is so important and your message is so important. And it's definitely gotten me thinking, more about, honestly, I'm going to leave. I hope all of you listeners out there consider, like, what's one thing you're going to take from this talk that you're going to go and implement? And I am not kidding when I say I'm going to go look and see, what can I take off my plate? Yeah. I know that I'm going to look and be like, nothing. There's
nothing. I know. But then ask yourself, but what if there was something?
Yeah. Yeah. Yes.
If I could take that thing off. And you know what? It doesn't have to be permanent. Take that thing off, see what happens, see how it feels. And if it works, great. If it doesn't, okay, I guess I need this thing. But let's take something else off. It's not, I think sometimes we, as women, we agonize so much over our decisions, thinking they're like, irrevocable or just catastrophic. Like, oh, if I make this choice, then like I can never go back. Or it doesn't work like that. You can make changes. You can make choices that serve you and don't sabotage you in the end. And I think that's really the name of the game. Oh, and one more thing I forgot to mention. I am launching not a podcast, but an Instagram live show.
Oh,
end of next week. It's called Outsmart Burnout.
Oh, love it.
Live guests every week on Fridays. And I would love to have you on the show sometime.
I would love to be on the show, although I am not outsmarting burnout. I would be an example of somebody who is not outsmarting.
Well, I'm interviewing folks who help women who are struggling with.
Oh, I could do that. I could do that all day.
Some aspect of health or wellness that can contribute to burnout. And I think, a lot of the things you do, I think food, stress, and anxiety and all of that stuff, that can burn you out too.
Oh, big time. And, that's what I do, as you know, is my mission is to free up the mental real estate that women use, worried about calories and carbs and all the things. But at the same time, I recognize that I freed up all of that mental real estate and I've created a life that I love, but I'm still burning myself out.
Yes.
Right? Like I've taken that,
filled it up with other stuff.
Well, and so much of it is like it's so much, when you're a high achieving person, I definitely have like I can run circles around you kind of attitude. I'm not competitive necessarily, but if you,
I am.
When I have
like self.
Right. Yes. Well, and when I've had new assistants, for example, come on board, I can't tell you how many of them have been like, whoa, when they see my calendar, because I'm just like, every day it's like, it's full. And then I am.
See, I get calendar anxiety now. Like if my calendar is getting too full, I'm like, I need to cancel something. Can't do it. It starts to stress me out, which is funny because I've gone to the other end now. Because in the beginning it would be like, there's an empty spot. Must fill it. Must do.
Yes. Right. What can I do in there?
I started shifting from doing to being is when I was able to like, okay, I need to chill that energy down. That energy is great, but it's not going to get me through this marathon of life,
I love that.
Sprint. It's a marathon.
Yeah. Yeah, no, this is really good. This has been so helpful. I honestly, like, I'm like, I don't even care if you helped any of my listeners. I love you guys, but I'm like, you have helped me so much today. This is what I needed.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. Well, that's why I do what I do. And also, like, yes, I am also a speaker. So if anyone needs someone for an event or a summit or a retreat or a workshop or a keynote, I'm your girl. I'm more than happy. I can talk about burnout all day long and make it fun and interesting and interactive for folks. So
yes,
that's another way folks can work with me or bring a little bit of the magic into their communities.
That is so wonderful. Oh, Dr. Zarya, thank you so much for coming on the show today.
I love these conversations. They're for me too, because I get to like get all fired up and
yeah, it's so good. Well, thank you. And of course, all of your links will be in the show notes, so people will be able to find you and continue to benefit from your wisdom and knowledge. So thank you so much.
You're so welcome.
You've been listening to The Life You Crave. I lost 30 pounds years ago without dieting, willpower, or deprivation. I'm on a mission to help other women, including you, do the same. You can book a free weight loss strategy session with me over at leahpinelli.com. That's LIAPINELLI.com. See you on our next call or on the next episode. And remember to like, subscribe, and leave a comment on iTunes.